My name is Harmon Dash. Welcome to another edition of Make It Fair, emanating from our studios in New Orleans, Louisiana. On Saturday, August 5th, 2017, New Orleans experienced an intense rain event, some areas of the city getting deluged in an excess of 10 inches of water. This caused scenes of flooding reminiscent of the aftermath following Hurricane Katrina, whose 12th anniversary is fast approaching this month. The New Orleans Sewage and Water Board reported to Mayor Mitch Landrieu's office that all of the city's drainage pumps were working to capacity as hard as they could to drain the water that had risen in the streets, causing damage to some local homes and businesses as quickly as possible. In the days that followed, it's been found as many as 16 of those pumps were not working, which triggered a massive outrage from residents and business owners anxious to find out who's to blame for the abject failure and why we were lied to. This event is multifaceted. Many moving parts needed to be in place for, to borrow the phrase, a perfect storm like this to take place. While our local officials can't control Mother Nature, did climate change factor into the intensity of the rains last Saturday? Where did the misinformation given to the public by the mayor's office originate? And do we, the taxpayers, bear any responsibility for voting down measures that would have increased funding for the maintenance of our drainage system? Attempt to dry out the details of this hugely complex equation. It's Harmon Dash here with Dr. Stuart Phillips, trying to figure out who or what is to blame for the flooding that occurred here in New Orleans last weekend. People understandably upset. They want answers, but this is a multifaceted problem, is it not?
It is. Remember, a dog can have ticks and fleas. There's usually not one thing that goes wrong when a catastrophe occurs. It's usually a bunch of things together.
What are some of the issues here? I mean, first off, can we give some credit to climate change for the amount of rainfall?
The best guess is that the amount of rainfall has increased in the United States by about 40%. Now, that's not an idle guess. It's easy to figure out how much more water can fit into air when it's warmer. Mm-hmm. And last year was the warmest year on record in the United States. And I think it's 13 of the warmest years on record have been in the last 15 years. So we're going to have more rain all over the United States. And if you put the figures together, you come up with about 40%, which doesn't make, whether it's 30 or 60%, doesn't make any difference
more rain.
when your car is ruined, right? It's always been the case that we've had a lot of rain, and it's gonna be more now. Get used to it.
And so especially in a place like New Orleans, our summers typically deliver a lot of rain. It had traditionally mostly been in July. August didn't get as much rain, but those storms are starting to creep into August more often, and the amount of rainfall is even bigger. So a 40% increase on a place like New Orleans is significant.
It's really significant in New Orleans, but don't tell that to the people from Baton Rouge or Covington. Okay? There was 3 feet of water in Covington this year. Mm-hmm. And we know how much water there was in Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. This is not a local problem for the rain. It's all over.
Yes. All right. Well, so we got more rain. That's going to be part of the reason for the flooding. What about our drainage system?
Okay. Our drainage system was put in the early part of the 20th century. Say 1920 to 1930. That's about right. Okay. It is the oldest one. It was state-of-the-art when it was put in. It is now overdue for redo.
It's direct current, right?
We are the only large city in the world that's run on 100-year-old generators, 120-year-old generators. We use direct current. Everybody else uses alternating current. When we buy current from NOPSI, I'm sorry, you see how old I am, from Entergy, when we buy current from them, we have to change it from AC to DC. Mm-hmm. You say, why not just buy the current? there's a really good reason, right? If there's a big storm, what happens to the power supply in our area?
Often goes out.
It goes out. You need local generators. Today, the cheapest, best thing are diesel generators. 20 years from now, maybe even less, it'll be batteries and solar, but not now.
Okay, well, so we've got to update the system. Why haven't we?
Okay. We haven't upgraded it because it's going to cost $2 billion with a B. And let's go into the math of that.
Okay.
There have been people who said, oh, it's all the mayor's fault. If he hadn't wasted that $2 million
Moving the Confederate
moving the monuments, he could have bought, he could have fixed this.
All right, well, let's be fair about that. You know, much of the money spent moving the monuments was raised so as not to dig into tax dollars that were collected. But let's just say the entire $2 million was from tax funds. That's not going to even come close to the $2 billion needed to replace this.
You know, you
system.
can play with statistics as much as you want, and so I did it both ways. If you take the most conservative estimate, that the only thing we'll charge the mayor for is the amount of money to move the monuments that he didn't raise from the general population, then it is 0.1%. Now, if you take it the other way and charge everything that happened to him,
everything that was in the cost of removing the monuments,
from everything,
then it works out about 2%.
It goes to 2%.
Okay.
So from 0.5% to 2%. So
that's not going to come anywhere near replacing the system that we need.
So anyone who gets in your face and says it's all the mayor's fault is either uneducated or he's not telling the truth, because 2% of the total is not going to fix the problem.
Okay, well, now the mayor's also getting blamed for this problem for a whole bunch of other reasons. Specifically, he received notification from the Sewage and Water Board during the event that all of these pumps that apparently weren't operating were operating to full capacity. And he disseminated that information to the people, and the people are now angry with the messenger. Does he bear any responsibility here?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? When he hired the people wanted to look good, and so what they said is, for what the pumps could do, they did it, which is like saying we did the best we could.
Okay.
It was really unfortunate. My experience, and I've been in positions like this where I've made mistakes, or I've been in organizations that weren't doing well, is tell the truth up front.
Right.
You do a lot better. Most of the big corporations that have disaster plans, that's what they do. If you recall, when Tylenol was poisoned and they had to take all the Tylenol off.
Back in the 80s?
In the 80s. There was only a dozen or 2 dozen packs of Tylenol that were, but they that were bad. But they wanted to make sure that everyone knew that it was safe.
That they were taking measures to ensure safety, sure.
Every dose of Tylenol they could find. Normally speaking, if you want to be thought of as honest, the best thing to do is to be honest. And so that wasn't a good idea on anyone's fault.
Well, can we illustrate some of the issue here? The Sewage and Water Board was set up over a century ago to run independently of the mayor's office. So, I mean, you know, just to give an example, the President of the United States has the ability to fire the head of the FBI and appoint a new head of the FBI, but the FBI clearly does not report to the president. So a similar power structure exists here. Mitch Landrieu has some authority over some of the board members who he can seat at the board, but they do not report directly to him. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's the same thing. If you were a retired engineer and someone said, I want you to take responsibility for a system that can't work, would you take the job? You'd only take the job if you were a really nice guy and you wanted to do your best. I know Scott very well. He is a very nice, honest guy. He wanted to do his best. He didn't want to rock the boat.
And we're talking about Cedric Scott?
No, Scott Jacobs,
Scott Jacobs.
The guy who was the president pro tem.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the engineers, but they act like engineers, and I don't mean that derogatorily. They took the situation. Engineers are not scientists; they're practical people. They took what they had and they did their best with it. Mm-hmm. And they're not politicians.
Right.
They didn't get up and have torchlight parades.
Okay.
They didn't get in anyone's face.
All right,
they said, I'll do what I can do, and they did it, and God rained on them.
Well, so there seems to be some anger, too, saying that the mayor and the Sewage and Water Board, they knew that this system needed updating, and they didn't do anything about it. They just pretended like they didn't know. They knew that the system is antiquated, though.
Actually, everyone knew. There's a report there that says that I didn't make up these figures. All you have to do is go on the internet. The system needs to be redone. It'll cost $2 billion. There's 2 or 3 ways to do it. You can argue about a few little things. You need good pumps. You need good drainage system. Both of ours are antiquated. One way or the other, it's going to cost a lot of money. Now, let's go into $2 billion. That's a lot of money.
This brings us back to that question. Why, Confederate monument costs didn't get us anywhere near that mark, but why can't we raise the $2 billion? What's getting in the way?
Politics. Who wants to pay taxes? You don't need $2 billion in one day. Let's say you need $2 billion in 40 or 50 years.
Okay.
Typically, people would say 40 years, but maybe you could get it to 50. So $2 billion divided by 50 is a number that the city could afford. Mm-hmm. But nobody wants to pay it because it means everyone would have to pay property taxes. It means there'd be no more homestead exemption.
Okay.
And it means that all those big buildings downtown would have to pay their share. Let's get back now to why we're here, you and I, to make it fair. Who makes the decisions? The rich people who own those buildings pay the politicians to run for office. So are those politicians going to put into effect a fair system that taxes everyone, especially those big, rich buildings? But let's be fair, also the small homeowner. Now, who pays it? The people that don't vote. The poor people who pay rent. Okay. They don't get a free ride.
Right.
This is exactly what we're talking about. So if you gave everyone in the city of New Orleans a chit for $25, and they could take that $25 and give it to the candidate of their choice for their campaign, you would see a huge change where the people where the elected officials wouldn't favor the homeowners and the wealthy people that own the big buildings. Instead, they would favor those poor people that are paying the rent. Because remember, if you rent something, your landlord pays all of the taxes. But if you own a house, the first $100,000 is tax-free.
Okay. Well, can we also, there have been some proposals about taxes. It seems like As a city, we prioritized fixing the Superdome after Katrina to the tune of $336 million. We love football in this city. We love our New Orleans Saints, but I guess fixing our drainage system isn't as glamorous, and that took a back seat.
Well, you know, we could go on this for hours. I'm a big Saints fan. I was very happy when the Saints won the Super Bowl, and hopefully I'll live long enough to see it again, but I doubt it. On the other hand, you live in a city that when we had a huge loss and a huge catastrophe, repaired the sports stadium before it repaired the libraries, the hospitals, or the drainage system. That tells you a lot about the people that live in New Orleans. I live here too. Mm-hmm. But if you're that kind of a city, it does seem to be a little bad to scream at the mayor that he didn't do this perfect job of allocating all of the forces. We can do it. $2 billion is a lot. Divided by 50, it's only 2%. Doable. It's doable. It would be nice if we could get the federal government to get it. It would be nice if we won the lottery. Even the biggest lottery wouldn't pay for a small part of this. It would be nice if we got manna from heaven. None of those things are going to happen. Either you're going to have to get a bucket, or you're going to have to dig in your pocket, and you're going to have to make the decision. Our point at Make It Fair is we'll make better decisions if everybody has a way to decide. If instead of just looking at the rich people who own the buildings, the politicians have to talk to everybody and think about everybody, they'll make better decisions.
It sounds like you're describing democracy, where everybody's got an equal voice.
Sounds good to me.
All right, well, we want to know what you think. Clearly, this problem was caused by a whole bunch of elements. What do you hold responsible for those floods last week, and what do you think we should do? You can leave your comments on our website, makeitfair.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. For Dr. Stuart Phillips, I'm Harmon Dash for Make It Fair. Thank you for watching us.